Hey everybody, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host Kurt Wiegel, and contrary to popular belief, I am not dead. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about Fate of Cthulhu. Kurt, that came out like 2 years ago. I know, but we've been on break and it's still worth talking about. I'll be upfront with you. This is one of these games where I was glad I got proven wrong. Because looking at this, studying it initially, I still think Fate is not the right system in which to do horror, especially cosmic horror, in the tradition of Call of Cthulhu, Trail of Cthulhu, Realms of Cthulhu, that sort of thing. So one of the things I really like that Evil Hat did with Fate of Cthulhu here is they kind of dodged out on the cosmic horror, gibber side of things. They really did. And they made a really interesting game out of it. In fact, I think it is my favorite time travel game I've ever seen. So the basic idea of Fate of Cthulhu is that at some point in the future, but it gives dates, but they're malleable based on when it starts. There was a Cthulhu apocalypse, big bad things rose out of the ground, or the sea, or the air, or whatever, and took over the world, and you are one of the last remnants of humanity. And what we figured out how to do is use Yog-Sothoth, because he is connected to all points in time, to send people from this future back in time, a la Terminator, to prevent the rise from happening in the first place. So it gives you two options for characters. One of them is just you're from this time and you're from our time now and you get caught up in events. And the other one is you are from this dark future. You are sent back to take care of this. And because of that, you carry taint. Now, taint or corruption is how they handle the squickier sides of the Cthulhu mythos. So if you're from this future and you went back in time, you automatically have a point of corruption. And usually you have something that comes out of that is both useful and a hindrance to you. So you might have bone spurs that jut out of your hands that you can use as weapons. Or you might be able to summon spectral tentacles to do your dirty work for you. The way the corruption works is it looks a little bit like one of the countdown clocks from Powered by the Apocalypse games. So the corruption countdown, there are 4 notches on it. So it's like a completely quadrisected circle. And you start out with one of those if you're from the future, 0 if you're from the present. And then as either you fumble a roll, or you get more exposed to mythos creations, or you willingly take it onto yourself, like reading the wrong book or a spell or something like that, you get another notch of corruption. When you get all 4 filled in, you have to rewrite one of your aspects to involve the mythos-like corruption. Once that gets rewritten, there's no going back. Once that aspect is rewritten, you can't go back and change it again. You can't fix it. There are ways you can tick back on the corruption clock, but they're kind of hard to come by. In fact, once you are completely corrupted, you have 2 options for your character. One of them is you essentially leave the hands of the player characters and it becomes a nightmare for the keeper to use against you. Or you do some sort of heroic sacrifice and the character's out of play, but he or she gets to do one last heroic thing. All right, so I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the fact that this book was the first outing of Fate condensed, which is trimming down all of the Fate rules into a much, much smaller pamphlet-sized folio. Honestly, unless you are really paying attention, there's very little difference between the two. I was trying to explain it to a friend of mine, and what we basically came up with was, well, yeah, I mean, you can switch it if you want to, but it's so similar, why bother? The big ones that I noticed were one of your aspects you get during character creation is a relationship to someone else in the party, and there's a slightly different advancement system with the milestones. honestly, I think what it lacks, and this is what something I thought was lacking in the Fate Core rulebook, was more stunts. I understand they wanted to avoid pages and pages of feats for a la D20, but I'll be honest, sometimes I need examples to figure out what I want to do with the stunt. So in those cases, I usually go back to the original Dresden Files game or Spirit of the Century, Legends of Angler, Star Blazer Adventures to get an idea of what I want to do with my stunts. There are multiple possible futures that you can come back from in this. Now, it's assuming you pick one and go. So the way these work is the things that you have to deal with are either Cthulhu himself, Dagon, Shub-Niggurath, Nyarlathotep, and the King in Yellow. Now, that's a pretty broad spectrum. The only thing when I was reading this summer that got a little for me was a lot of these, one of the first stages of the apocalypse is a pandemic that wipes out a significant fraction of humanity. Guys, this was written in 2018, 2019, before COVID was really an issue. So it was, if anything, it was prescient, not exploitive. As I said up front, I didn't think this game would work. I kind of bought it because I was at the Source Comic and Games in St. Paul, and I was never get out there, and I had a little money to spend, and this looked the most interesting, and I thought, well, if nothing else, I can mine it for ideas. Guys, this is slick as hell. This is a really slick game. And if you're interested in a different take on the Cthulhu mythos that isn't the instant, oh no, my sanity hath been blasted into oatmeal, but it's a slower spiral down, it's well worth your time. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.